Basculegion is not a legendary Pokemon, but you wouldn't know it if you watched battles with it. The Ubers tier is the tier of the strongest legendary Pokemon so strong that they've been banned from standard play, where Pokemon like Miraidon and Arceus dominate the format. But take a look at this player survey. Amongst all the other Pokemon, Basculegion is ranked as the most problematic Pokemon. So problematic that people are seriously thinking about banning it, or at least parts of it. Imagine that, a non-legendary going to the land of legendary Pokemon and showing them who's the real king. I'm here to explain why Basculegion is terrorizing the Ubers format and why people want to actually ban it. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We've seen a lot of growth in the past few months and I'd appreciate it if you could help out the channel for free. Basculegion is a 530 base stat Pokemon whose stats are reasonably distributed. Its high HP makes it universally tanky, its attack is good, maybe great, but not extraordinary, and everything else is decidedly average. Water is a generally good type, and Ghost is nice to have. Water Ghost has a lot of good resistances, some weaknesses to common moves like Knockoff, but some strengths too, like being immune to extreme speed, a common move in Ubers. But we wouldn't be talking about Basculegion if that's all it had. First of all, its abilities are great too. Mold Breaker, Swift Swim, and Adaptability are all good, but adaptability is the real key for Basculegion. With a power boost on stab, that 112 attack is a lot more scary. Even Uber Pokemon will have to be careful around an adaptability boosted Wave Crash. Swift Swim is an idea because you could pair it with Drizzle Kyogre, but it's overall unreliable because Koraidon, a top Pokemon, has an ability that sets up Sun and can ruin that plan. But again, this is not even close enough to being able to scare the likes of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. The real kicker is a move called Last Respects. Last Respects is a famous move whose power increases by 50 for each teammate who faints, reaching 300 base power when all 5 teammates are gone. Also, it gets boosted by adaptability to become 600 base power. Last Respects is a move that's balanced for the in-game competitive formats which only allow 3 or 4 Pokemon. Capping out at 150 base power or 200 base power is much more reasonable. You get a decently strong move at the cost of a lot. But 300 base power with adaptability, that's too much. For that reason, it shouldn't be surprising to know that Last Respects is banned in standard play, the OU tier, but it isn't banned in Ubers. Ubers typically has a much stricter criteria for what is ban-worthy. After all, the Ubers tier is the format meant for banned Pokemon. Things only get banned from Ubers in extreme circumstances. For example, Calyrex Shadow was banned earlier this generation, Zacian was banned in Generation 8, and Mega Rayquaza was banned in Generation 6. But a lot of people are calling Last Respects Basculegion one of those extreme circumstances. It is too dominating even in Ubers and people want to ban Last Respects. A base 300 power attack boosted by adaptability to 600 leaves no survivors. All Pokemon, even legendaries, die in one hit. If you are not a normal or dark type, you have no chance of living. Basculegion works in Ubers by using an agility moveset. Agility, Wave Crash, Last Respects, and a filler move like Terra Blast or Substitute. Basculegion's high HP stat means that even against legendary Pokemon, it does have the capability of setting up 1 agility, and that 1 agility is enough to outspeed almost all relevant Pokemon. And from there, it's game over. Well, almost, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Add in Terrestrialization, and late game, Basculegion becomes extremely tricky to take down. For example, Terra Blast Fighting catches normal type Pokemon or Pokemon trying to Terra Normal out of Last Respects. Terra Ground lets you set up an agility on Miraidon, and Terra Fairy lets you set up on Koraidon. Realistically, there's a lot of defensive Terra types you could use. Substitute is particularly nasty because not only does it let you set up on status conditions like Toxic, but it also lets you scout for a defensive Terra. If you suspect a Pokemon might Terra Normal to escape Last Respects, you Substitute to bait that out and then hit them with an adaptability Wave Crash. Even more, Substitute is good for Pokemon which have Sucker Punch like Qianpao or King Gambit. It's a truly vicious combo. Even if you don't sacrifice all 5 Pokemon, even a 200 or 250 base power move is plenty strong with adaptability. But there are a few relevant Pokemon that Basculegion doesn't outspeed even after an agility. Namely Choice Scarf Koraidon and Miraidon. Even though these Pokemon are already naturally fast, they still sometimes do run a Choice Scarf. For that reason, Basculegion is often paired with Sticky Web. That way you outspeed Choice Scarf Pokemon and you can still demolish a team even if you can't find an agility opportunity. In fact, Sticky Web is considered one of the key reasons for Basculegion's success. It adds a level of reliability because it gets past that Scarf Miraidon hurdle and removes the complete dependence on agility. It's almost funny in a way. One of the best Uber's core is a bug and a shark. There are other ideas too, like using Basculegion on a Trick Room team. Uber's inherently has a lot of fast, powerful legendary Pokemon, so Trick Room is more common than you'd see in standard play. Arceus is a good Trick Room setter with its Trick Room plus Healing Wish combo. Even more, there's Trick Room star Pokemon like Calyrex Ice to make the strategy even more viable. There's a funny screenshot of someone on ladder using a level 98 Basculegion, that way it always outspeeds other Basculegion in Trick Room. If you really want, you could also even use Choice Scarf Basculegion so that way you don't have to agility, but that's more of a niche option used for surprise factor. Overall, agility is the most popular moveset because it's generally more reliable than a Trick Room team or a Choice Scarf Basculegion. Inherently, Basculegion is a Pokemon that you have to save for the late game, otherwise Last Respects wouldn't be strong enough. Basculegion typically only works on offensive teams that are willing to sacrifice Pokemon to attack. Teams that inherently lose Pokemon in the process of blowing up the opponent. Defensive Pokemon almost have an anti-synergy with Basculegion because you want your Pokemon to faint. Also, you basically need Sticky Web because otherwise you have those issues with Choice Scarf Pokemon. It's why despite Basculegion being a top Pokemon, it also has a low usage rate. Basculegion has a very specific type of team that it fits well on, a high-flying Sticky Web offense. So if you're not using that, you probably wouldn't use Basculegion. It may look odd, but just because it's not top 10 in usage doesn't mean it's not dominating. Realistically, it's not impossible, but hard to beat Basculegion in the team builder. It happens that the best dark type in the format, Ting-Lu, is weak to water, and Arceus Normal is a great Pokemon, but it does mean you can't use other Arceus forms like Ground or Fairy. Yveltal is not in Gen 9, so there's no elite Sucker Punch Pokemon and you'd have to use more niche options like Sucker Punch Kingambit. There aren't many other natural ways to stop Last Respects. The weak must fear the strong, and that's why Pokemon like Miraidon sometimes use Terra Normal, purely for Last Respects. Terra Normal in general is a slightly gimmicky but sometimes effective way to protect against Basculegion. One problem is that Basculegion, as mentioned earlier, is on these high-powered offense teams. Basculegion synergizes well with teammates like Miraidon and Koraidon, who are both independently threatening and force defensive Terras too. Trying to manage one Terrestrialization per game for 3 of the top Pokemon in the format is a very tough task. Honestly, trying to manage against all 3 Pokemon in general is tough because of their synergy. A very basic example is Miraidon can often do enough damage to Ting-Lu so that it feints to Basculegion late game. The main way you want to beat Basculegion is in battle. Outposition it so that it can't get that Last Respects off in the first place. Deny it opportunities to get that agility. Deny that Sticky Web. Make your opponent give up their Terrestrialization early, not you. Of course, this is easier said than done, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. But that's the crux of it. Is Last Respects too much for the format? It's a strategy that needs a combo of adaptability, agility, and Sticky Web to be truly dominant. Does that meet the high standard of being banned from the format meant for banned Pokemon? The survey I mentioned earlier definitely indicates that it's a common opinion that it is too strong, and there will likely be a suspect test in the future where players vote to either ban or not ban Last Respects. What would you vote? Let me know down in the comment section below.